All right, welcome everyone to the Meridian Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. Today is Wednesday, November 14th, and it is 5:35. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jessica West. I'm the Vice President. Our President, Joe Greer, will be out tonight, so I will be filling in for her for tonight's meeting. So if we could get roll call.
Yes, thank you. Joe Greer, like she said, is absent. Jessica West.
Here.
Keith Bevan.
Here.
Dom Gelsomino.
Present.
Michelle Jensen.
Here.
Jackson Jones is absent. John Nesmith.
Here.
Mike Pepin is absent. Craig Steele.
Present.
All right, can I get an adoption of the agenda? Or motion for an adoption of the agenda?
Madam President,
Yes?
I move to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Craig Steele seconds.
All approved?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion granted. Can I get a motion for the approval of the October 10 regular meeting minutes?
Madam President,
Yes.
I move that we adopt the regular minutes from the October meeting.
Craig Steele seconds.
All approved?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion granted. On to announcements. So, Joe Greer, who can't be here tonight, we've discussed the commissioner elections in December, and so for next month, we'll actually be we'll be voting on those positions for next year. It would be nice to know if there are anyone who wants to speak tonight and show their interest. Would anyone like to say a few words of interest in one of the positions? All right, well,
Madam President, just an inquiry, there's just the president and vice president, correct?
Yes, and so if anyone wants to make any comments on that,
Madam President,
talk about it tonight, yes?
real quick, how it usually works is the vice president gets an automatic nomination for president. And so usually that goes without saying, they become the president. So then we select people for the vice president, or we have the process for voting for the vice presidency with the same stipulation that the next year your name automatically gets thrown in for presidency. Now, you can nominate someone for president, but I don't think we've ever done that, have we, John?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Certainly, we like to talk about it because Emily keeps us on the straight and narrow
Yes.
every year. So, but certainly it's kind of that grooming process. And of course, we can always vote somebody else in.
Yeah.
Understood? Thank you.
All right, then we'll move on to the all commission goals. We discussed that this year, we can approve them later in the year than normal. Usually they need to be in by December's meeting, and so we would vote on them tonight. But this year, the schedule's changed a little bit, and they need them in January, so we will be voting on them next month as well. Would you like to add something, Mr. Steele?
Just that you're mixing a combination of the all commission goals and the commission report. So the commission report would normally have to be approved tonight and presented to the clerk in December, but that we've been told that doesn't have to happen, and we can approve it in December and happen in January. Our regular process for the commission goals is in December. I would just point out that you can see your current 13 all commission goals on page 2 of the agenda. So I would just encourage you to review those, and then we like to come with that to the next meeting with to start with proposed changes. So if anyone has any proposed changes prior to the meeting, if you could email them to myself and Rachel, we can come to the meeting with at least a draft that then will then get discussed and voted on at the December meeting. We will also be meeting internally on tweaks and changes that we know may need to happen based on, well, for example, I think the fire station is on here, number 12, and it's moved to another site, so that one would come off as an example. But we'll be looking for things like that and suggest changes ourselves as staff. But if you feel strongly about anything new that you'd like to see or come off, just let me know.
And is it correct we're not going to do the same kind of order as last time where each individual commissioner came up with their own rating and then we took the totals?
I think we
Or
will
is-
do
or
it
we will
the
do it the
same way
same?
where
Okay.
everyone comes up with their own rating, we'll tally them up, and we will, adopt the combined tally, the combined scores as the order of priority.
Okay, great. That worked very well last year because it, kept it organized and
Yep.
each person was able to have their own number included for the vote.
Yep.
Wonderful. All right, next is Shelley Houston with our events.
Hello, Commissioners. We're not confident our live stream is working, so we're going to double check that. So sorry about that. Christmas, Christmas, Christmas. Let's have lots of Christmas, the best Christmas ever. That's a hashtag. Anyway, that's what we're kind of consumed with right now. We're also working on our winter and spring activity guide for Parks and Rec, and I'm putting together a nice annual report, kind of the year 2018 in review in words and pictures. So that'll be coming out to you next month. But anyway, beyond that, we're really kind of focused on our Christmas activities. Everyone thinks, well, gosh, Christmas is so far away. But when you think that we have things like Santa's mailbox going up on November 21st, we're going to fill the little free library with books on December 1st. The parade and tree lighting is November 30th. So really, we don't have all this gobs of time that everyone perceives us to have. So we're deep in the heart of Christmas, and I just came out of a Christmas in Meridian planning meeting, and everything's going pretty well. Soon, Jessica will talk to you about your chance to participate in the Winter Lights Parade, as you do each year, so that's lots of fun. Just for your reference, as I usually do, I gave you the little schedule of upcoming events. One little who's-y what's that I mention. Down on December 11th, you'll see there's Coffee with the Mayor. When I printed this out, we hadn't determined the location, but evidently the mayor's office has chosen Potter's Tea House. Potter's Tea House, just over here on Main Street, as the location for Coffee with the Mayor. So it's always great if any of you like to join us for that. There are a lot of volunteer opportunities in November and December. So if you or any family members, friends, teens have extra capacity and you're curious about what the options are, you can always contact our office. The letters to Santa Claus need to be answered. There are some gifts for the Head Start children that need to be shopped for and wrapped. There's just a never-ending, we're a never-ending bucket of need. So if you know anybody, just let us know, and we will put you to work. We'll find something that works. One last thing, we're planning also the Mayor's State of the City address. That'll take place on February 6th. It's a Wednesday in February. And we're going to use that new Galaxy Event Center over at Wahoo's. And we've had a chance now to take a closer look at it, and it's quite lovely, and we're going to make it work. So that'll be quite an experience. So you'll want to save the date for that as well. Anyhow, look this over. If you have any questions, concerns, worries, ideas, or comments, let us know. And I look forward to seeing you at the parade, hopefully. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Nope? Thank you. I'm going to go play Last Call Trivia at Moxie Java. Oh, I need to sharpen my brain.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shelley. Next word to myself. We're going to get started with the float. This will be real quick. Rachel's going to bring up a slide for us.
Wait a minute.
Or we can go without it if we need to.
It's not wanting to let us change the.
All right, well, I'll just go ahead. If it comes up, that's wonderful. If not, this is pretty simple. Last year, if you were here on the commission, I proposed Elf on a Shelf as our theme. Our current ride is Santa's Helpers, so it kind of tied in together. But it also was kind of easy for us to all make a costume. Basically, if anyone's familiar with it, Elf on a Shelf is all red with a white neck and a Santa hat. And the Santa hats are very easy to find, and wearing all red, we were able to find their sweatshirts at Walmart for $6.97 even, if you just wanted to wear a solid bright red sweatshirt. And I will bring white necks again. They're just basically like a cutout little neck design, connect it with a little pin, wear a Santa hat, and you look wonderful. And then it helps because, well, that is true. So I love them because, oh, we did get some pictures. So this was us of last year. I'm sorry I couldn't get the one. I know I look kind of crazy right here, but if you see, with all the people underneath the actual building, it seemed to be everyone who really dressed up. We stayed in underneath that building, and then for the commissioners or individuals who wanted to ride the float but weren't 100% wanting to wear the red outfit, as you noted, looking wonderful, like all of us, we found that they sat outside the little building. But it's kind of exciting because the kids have something to look at, right? They have a building, and they look, and there's all these people dressed up as elves, and it just adds to the excitement because really this is a wonderful opportunity to connect with the residents and really get into the holiday spirit with them and add some excitement and show our involvement. So if you want to go to the next slide, this is a picture of the actual elf on a shelf in case you don't have one yourself. If you have one that you're willing to tie to the float and bring in a little bit early that night, that would be wonderful. And if we go to the next slide, these are like a really good goal to have. We rocked it last year, but these individuals, you go next, they take it a step further, and I think it's really important to always have goals. Always be pushing yourself. If you'll keep clicking, and then one more time. This is where we could be someday. I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but each year, the more that we get into this, the more excitement we add, I feel like the better impact we'll have in the community and really having fun with it. So if you go on to the next slide, this is the last slide. This is a picture that I had from ourselves. I wish I would have caught the ones that the Idaho Statesman took of our float last year, but unfortunately I couldn't find them online this late in the game, so I just had to use what I had available, which is why I don't have pictures with everyone who was on the float. I apologize. Thanks. So what this is just pretty much a red, all wearing as much as red as you can, and I cut out the snowflakes and just tied or glued them to skirts, which is pretty easy to do if you're female or you have a wife or a child. But as a male, you can just wear a red sweatshirt or even a red turtleneck, add a little neck thing, and a Santa hat. So I really think it would be a wonderful opportunity for everybody to get involved and dress like an elf.
Madam President, I'm sure the gentleman on this bench will be also able to find any onesies at Walmart or Target.
But, you know, and if you don't want to go all in and you just want to do like the waist up, then black pants would be great. I feel like black jeans is also great because it doesn't cause attraction, and then we all kind of look uniform. And really, you have a bigger impact the more uniform, I believe, we will appear on the float.
And do you still have white neck colors for everyone, or do they need to provide their own?
I will make some more unless everyone wants to make their own, but I find it easier if I just cut them out and have them there that night. It doesn't take me long, and that way you can just put it on. Does that work? But you will need to provide your own Santa hat and whatever your attire is, and I'll just be bringing the neck this year, the neck pieces, if that sounds wonderful for everybody.
Perfect. Good job.
Does that sound good? All right, wonderful. Thank you.
Madam President, just a reminder on dates and times. So it is Friday, November 30th, which is the Friday, not the day after Thanksgiving, but the week after Thanksgiving. We start at Story Park. I believe parade time is 6:30, and we
inside the chamber VIP office.
We kind of want to be in our places by 6. And traffic's usually really bad leading up to that, so you may want to aim for 5:45. And so you don't have to worry about standing in the cold for 45 minutes. We do have access to the Chamber of Commerce building to stay warm, drink some coffee or hot chocolate if you want. And but we do want to have you there a little bit early. And I think, as always, family members are welcome. I think it's more the merrier kind of thing. And we'd love to have you come and participate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And on to old business, Discovery Park sign update.
Good evening. Excuse me. So I was hoping that Stephanie Inman would have been here to talk about her art sign and the entrance sign and some of the other artsy signs that are going in the park, but her mother had knee surgery and she's going to take care of her for a couple of weeks. They live in Lewiston, so she's on her own. So anyway, I'm coming in off the bench, so bear with me. She's she gave me a list of stuff that she wanted to make sure that I brought up to you. I've been part of the design as well as Steve, and so we know quite a bit about it. So I'm going to use this as a cheat sheet just so I don't leave anything out. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about is at the entrance to Discovery Park. As you know, Discovery Park is a unique blend of educational items, interactive play features for kids, the DigiFuse panels and the climbing map and all the exciting things, as well as sports. There's an off-leash dog area and some walking trails, so there's really a huge variety of activities that are in the park. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to kind of capture the true sense of what it is, try to be a little bit unique, different, think out of the box. I know last spring, I think it was, that we introduced, as we were going through some of the naming for the park, we introduced the concept of having these rolled steel tubes that we used for inspiration as some of this. So that's kind of where it transitioned, kind of morphed into that. So you can see that we had this inspiration with the lighted columns, some of the naming, and just to kind of refresh everybody's memory, we have the DigiFuse panels that are going on the playground that have Idaho, the state flower, the state mammal, all those things, and then on the back you can reference in more detail mammals and plants and things like that. Sports activities as well as passive play. So you can see the colored dots that are towards the front of the park, and there's 2 arched landscape beds up there that are ringed with rocks boulders that will match some of the playground features. So there's a continuity of design and materials that lead you in. At the very top of the screen, that's Lake Hazel, just for orientation, and that will be the main entrance for a while until future phases get built. We see that the main entrance to the park may change because there'll be a mid-mile collector that'll take you down the right-hand side of the screen and into the park. If that's the case and we determine at some point in the future, we can always move these things and move them to the entrance. If we wanted to remodel it and make it a little more current with the rest of the park, we can do that. So really, that's the design, and you can see the model for scale. There's 3 columns. They're 11, 12, and 14 feet high, and just for the sense of scale, the people there are looking up at them. These signs would have they'd be lit from the outside, so it's a rolled steel tube that is painted steel, and then the images would be put on the outside. Some would be held out a little ways, some a little bit farther, some would be tight to it, so they'd be rolled. So there's also a 3-dimensional kind of effect with it. The park name is very prominent. They would be lit from the outside, with the exception of the very top of the tallest tube. So when the sun went down, we would have that on a photocell, so it would be lit from within. So when the sun went down, then the stars would come out over the sign, still lit from the outside. And we might do some things where some of it takes a back seat where it dims a little bit, and the stars are more prominent, because the park is going to really be open after dark with the lit softball fields. So we want to have, a lot of our park signs aren't lit because the parks are closed after dark. But this one, it makes sense to have a lit sign. So that's kind of where we're headed with that. Are there any questions for a?
Real quick, Madam President, if you allow. The lighting on the top of the tallest tube here, I know it's going to be details, but are we using solar? Are we using just regular lamps on the inside? What will be the energy source for this?
Yeah, great question, Madam President. It would be not solar, regular, probably put LED in there so they just have a really long lifespan, because I think that's going to be, as we work through some of the constructability, it's going to be a little bit cumbersome to get the lid off to replace a bulb that goes out. So we want something that's going to last for a long time up there. But no, there's regular 110 power that's being run to those corners. Yeah, great question.
Madam President.
Thanks.
Yes.
Mike, so I'm just confused on the scale. Is it closer to the scale on the screen or the scale up here? Because they're completely different. That guy's a lot taller in scale
So
than...
the image on the screen is outdated. They were a lot taller.
Okay.
The tallest one was close to 16 feet. And we started pricing some of that out. And some of the steel that comes in rolls, it's dimensional. So it cuts the price. If you cut a couple of feet off of it, it cuts the price down by 30%.
Okay.
So
that's
great,
closer.
Yeah, great question. That's the size.
And assuming that looks like a man, maybe he's like 6 foot or...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the tallest one's 14. So we have 11, 12, and 14.
Thank you.
And Mr. Burton, I have a question. For the top of the tube, is it solid? So with it being much shorter, I just foresee it being climbed on. So is
Yeah.
it just like a solid
It's-
top? So if it was on top, it's not anything?
You bet. It's solid, and you know, everything we do, we try to make really, really durable. So that's always at the kind of the top of our mind, is like, can you throw rocks at it? Can you climb it? We don't want people to do that, but they do.
Yes.
And yeah, it's very durable.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question.
Madam President? Mike, with these, did we look at maybe lighting up more of them? Because the one picture you showed on here looked really cool.
Yeah.
With all
Yeah.
the different lights on it and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So how this kind of morphed into what it is here, originally we had talked about cutting images out and lighting them from within. But if you cut those out and then try to roll the steel, like you'll get a leg of an animal or an ear or something that won't roll. So it will just pop out. If you take a piece of paper and cut an image out and try to roll it, part of those images they pop out, they don't roll. So as we developed this and went from an idea and then worked with the artist, and the artist works with the fabricator, the fabricator's like, you can't do that. And some of the inspiration for our thoughts, we don't know what those were made out of. They could have been made out of plastic. So.
Did you cut them after you rolled it?
No.
With the torch or something?
They're still
like
going to
that?
pop.
What's that?
They get heated up with the torch and pop. Some of the detail on them is we'll have parts and pieces that are going in different directions. So the other issue that we were running into is what to put behind those if they were cut out, and then what do you put behind them? Because you got to keep trash out and you got to keep bees out, and so that became a little bit problematic. I mean, because then you have to roll plexiglass and try to attach it inside this tube, and it was like, we need to think of this a little bit differently. So, hope that helps some of the thought process.
Yes, thank you. I love the signs. This looks great so far.
One question, Madam President. So, Mike, are these like a vehicle wrap to where you could change them down the road if there was other input? Or are these painted to where it's a little bit more work if you wanted to change them or do something different? I really like it. I just think you could do a lot of different things with it depending upon the time of season. If you ever got 10 years down the road and you wanted to upgrade and change.
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, we're thinking of it painted.
Okay.
and not wrapped. So changing it would be, I think the change would come when it neared the end of its lifespan.
Of course.
Mr. Sidaway?
And Mike, also along the same question, aren't some of the figures actually attached as a third dimension on the outside and not just painted?
Yeah.
So I
Yes,
think that's
they are.
so it's not
Oh,
just a
gotcha.
wrap or just a paint. It is maybe the background's painted, but the animals, the figures are actually popping out as a 3D relief.
Very
Yeah,
good.
so they would be, so the animals would be curved, and then they would be on posts
Posts.
behind it, so
Yep.
it's three-dimensional. And they would be so maybe one would be on the steel, and the next one would be off an inch, and one would be off 2 inches, and the letters stand out. So you get a little shadow line, as well as some three-dimensional qualities to it.
I like it.
Madam President?
Yes.
So is this the only, so when you pull into the park, these are the only signs that you're gonna see there?
This is the main entrance sign. We are developing a sign package for the rest of the park that has, where the pollinator garden would be, and where the xeriscape or drought-tolerant native plant garden and the Firewise garden would be.
Where, so,
And then also.
where's the City Meridian part? Just, because I know we have other signage that's pretty consistent with City Meridian, Discovery Park, and all that stuff. I was just curious if that was a consideration. It seems odd that, like, if you go to, well, any other one that I can think of, at least right now, but it didn't have City Meridian designation on it, but I'm sure
Yeah.
you have a plan for that.
No,
so.
so we've, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, we had one consistent sign, and it's the green park sign. And we've gone away from that, and we've gone to giving parks more of their own unique identity. And some of that identity, and people know it's a Meridian Park. I mean, Rita Husky, with the flower that's in the end of the shelter that says Rita Husky Park, we don't have Meridian on that. We put a Meridian thing on the shelter post next to it. Keith Bird Legacy Park, there isn't a Meridian on that at all. I think we've just, I mean, that's a great question. We just have gone away from that. I mean, I don't know if we need
Madam
to
President.
put it somewhere.
I don't
I'm
know.
open
I
to.
guess maybe that's
ideas.
because of history, you bring up a good point. I think, and I'm not, I think we got way better parks in City of Boise. So, however, their signs are, City of Boise, but it'll say like whatever park it is, so I don't know if that's necessary or not.
Right.
I like the sign.
No,
but I
you're
was
absolutely,
curious.
absolutely right. The city of, just as an example, the City of Boise has their logo on every single sign. And we've gone away from that the last 3 parks, and now 4, I think.
Madam
we're
President.
Just kind of
Steele?
headed in that.
Do you have something to add?
Like, I think John brings up a really great point, because the back side of this park is CUNA.
Yeah.
So I definitely think somewhere, maybe at the bottom or something, that we brand that Meridian. Because again,
Okay.
we're so close to that CUNA line right there that there could be some confusion and stuff there. And it's going to be a park that we're very proud of, so we need to take the credit on that and not CUNA, right?
I
Yeah,
don't
no,
know. I was
just to kind of, some background
I love the
explanation into
themes, Mike. You
thought
know that.
process.
I mean, so.
Yeah, I think, the other consideration might be to put the address on there too. I mean, if we have,
Just at the bottom on the,
Yeah, right at
below
the
the
bottom.
Discovery
We
there.
can-
Yeah.
we can put that in there. Yeah.
And I don't think it would affect that much just to put that on the bottom with the address.
Just-
City of Meridian with the logo and the address.
up
So
the
it sounds
side.
like it wasn't intentionally taken away or moved away from that. It was just to create unique identities, so.
Yeah, we didn't say, no, don't put it on there. We just, because of some of the the identity direction that we've been going. We just didn't put it on there. Honestly, probably didn't even talk about, we didn't talk about it and say, no, leave it off. I mean,
Okay.
if that helps, so.
I mean, I guess, because we are building, putting things together, I just think it might be something to talk about. Like I said, I really like, and we worked on theming stuff, and I think that's great. We've also had an extensive conversation and a survey on the name, and there is other Discovery Parks, and I think Discovery Park Meridian would be, I don't know, it may not be an issue, but.
I do agree. It sounds like it would be a good idea, and most of our commissioners, if not all, are in favor of that. So it seems like that would be a wonderful thing, and it might also be
Somehow.
particularly important because it's on that line.
No,
Yeah,
that's,
Madam President, I'll just
Yes.
weigh in as director. I would support that. I don't think it was left off intentionally to leave it off. Our focus has been on, okay, 3 pillars. What should the themes be? Let's do one with park activities, one with animals, one with sports. Really focused on that. I think all the comments are valid. I could totally see maybe right under the Discovery, a City of Meridian logo going on the black part down there. I could see how that could help brand it, and I think the point's well taken.
Cool.
good idea. Thanks, John. No, it's a good idea.
Madam
So-
President, just one quick comment, you know, moving on from that is, Mike, this is an incredible work. You know, having moved 8 years ago from a city of very close to San Diego, this is something that reminds me of what I would see in a San Diego Zoo, Balboa Park, these very big destination locations. So my compliments on, you know, on the final product of what this is looking like. It's incredible.
Thanks. I'd love to take credit for it. Thank you, though.
It looks great. It does look wonderful. Is there any other questions or concerns we should discuss while we're looking at these right now?
No, I think it looks great.
All right, well, thank you so much.
So some of the, just couple other real quick things. Here's some of the other signage that we're going to integrate into the park. And then another fun thing is, so a couple of selfie stops along the way in front of the, we're going to develop one in front of the dog park that you can put your head through, maybe a dog, and some, anyway, just trying to have some fun with some of this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Madam President, I do have a quick question, Mike, before you run away. The signage for the gardens, how tall are those?
You
Are
can
they
see
6 feet?
Yeah, they're about 6. Yeah. Yeah. There's
Very tall.
I mean, it's a big site. So I
Yes.
think scale-wise, that if they're about this big and, maybe
Yeah.
18 inches wide or so, that it's an appropriate scale.
Are they flat, or will they be multi-dimensional,
it's-
circular?
So flat, laser-cut steel
Okay,
that is, it should be readable from both sides,
okay.
So they're not gonna.
not rolled. No.
And no concern about those points on the top?
Yeah.
From a-
On the very top, no. No, you can grind it off, so
Okay.
it's, you can't get cut on it, though. Good, good, I like that thought. Yep, always,
If we're making sure that kids can't do anything to the round signs, I'm just imagining what they would do to signs they could probably leap up and jump on.
Well, the
And-
signs would be doing something to them, so there's a lot to learn.
and they're gonna shake them.
They're
So we
gonna
might
shake
have to
up,
put
they're
a
gonna-
brace at the bottom to,
That was,
these haven't been fully developed, but this is where we're headed.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could also do something along like a triangular shape or some kind of T shape to help provide stability, but at the same time build in some kind of design. But I just wanted to make sure I was interpreting that stature appropriately.
No, good.
Madam President, I would also just
Sidaway?
point out that we have some taller steel signs throughout Kleiner Park, and we haven't had problems there. They're different, but they're still
Yeah.
probably 10 feet tall, I would guess, the ones for the 4 different zones and areas. We haven't had issues with them.
Yeah, I'm sure they get, who knows what what they go through when we're not looking.
That's
And so,
right.
and we haven't had any problems. So, yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we're on to new business. Mr. Garrett White.
All right, well, good evening, and thank you for having me tonight. Thanks for your time. We're going to give you an update on home court and what things have been happening over there, who's been using it, and all the above. So, to switch this. I'm going to start out with my staff. Right now, we're budgeted for 6 part-time staff and 1 full-time site supervisor, as well as myself. Ross Cipriano is our full-time employee right now. He's our site supervisor, oversees the facility in the evenings. And he's the guy that kind of makes sure everybody goes to the right court, right place. People have questions, they pretty much come to him. The other 5 part-timers right now that we currently have are on the front lines every day. We preach customer service to them and just make sure that they understand what we want over there. We have 1 seat vacant so far. We've been in the process of hiring that person. Hopefully we'll have them hired here soon with that. So.
And Garrett, you can control it yourself with the space bar, I think,
Perfect.
or the arrows.
Space bar works. Uh-oh.
I think it's the one you want to be on.
All right.
And notice that if your last name starts with H, you have a better chance of being hired.
That's a good point. Yes, that's a great point. Good point. Never saw that. Okay, see if I can figure this out. All right, we're going to jump into programming. Right now, with the idea of buying or purchasing home court from the YMCA a couple of years ago, we wanted Bay 5, where the Weiss fitness equipment was going to be, as classroom space, and we did all kinds of different concepts and things to get more classrooms in there. After all said and done, we're going to have that renovation done, or hopefully here pretty soon, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But the programming right now currently includes our open gym, which we have every night in the evening, per council's request, to have a court open for people just to come down and show up and play. Right now, Mondays are basketball, Tuesdays are volleyball, Wednesdays pickleball, Thursdays badminton, and pickleballers are kind of crowded badminton at this point. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday we consider family night. We encourage you to bring your kids down there, get the wiggles out, things like that, especially in the winter when it's cold outside. Bring them down there, hang out, play. We have everything from volleyball, badminton, pickleball, basketball, whatever we want to do down there, we can set up for them and have them come out and play. So it's pretty nice. Programmed space, we have morning pickleball as well as noon ball basketball. Noon ball basketball is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. Pickleball is basically every day. We have a huge pickleball numbers with that. We just currently moved line dancing over from our current community center, the small one over here off of, is it 3rd Street? 2nd Street. Thank you, Colin. Moved line dance over there basically because they needed more space, as we know. So we moved them over there. They start over there the first Sunday in November. They've been over there a couple times already, and they love it. We have the sound system going over there and everything else. On top of that, starting in January, we're moving our little, what's called Amazing Athletes, 3 to 6-year-olds over there in Bay 5 to, it's basically teach them sports, teach them, get them out, get them active, teach them different things that they've currently been at other communities and other sites. So we're moving those over. Some of the programs that we will have over there, once Bay 5 is renovated and done, will be our martial arts classes on Tuesdays and Fridays that we currently have, some dance classes, some other fitness classes that we want to move over there as well, to start programming that space a little bit more in depth. Right now, as I'll get into a little bit later, is the moisture issue we have in Bay 5 right now too, that we're still kind of going back and forth with insurance on that as well. So going to the next slide, see if I can do it right. Our home court user fees, I put these up here just to kind of give you a reminder of what we have going over there. If you're just a Meridian resident, youth or senior is $2, $3 for Meridian adult, $4 for all non-residents. Then we got council approved monthly fees that we do as well, so you don't have to keep paying the day pass. You do a monthly fee. Monthly fees were based on basically about 7-8 visits a month. You might as well get the monthly membership compared to just drop-in times. And I can tell you the pickleballers in one of these next slides I show you will show all our memberships. You can see that the pickleballers are really taking advantage of the monthly membership. As here, memberships. So right now we have a total of 203 memberships that are going on. That's as of today, this morning at about 11 o'clock this morning. You can see that the senior/youth is about 74, Meridian adults is 24, and then all non-residents is 105. Grand total of 203 memberships. When we first took this over, looking at YMCA trends in the past 3 years, things like that, they have what they called at home court is a court membership, where members were only allowed to go there and just use just the courts. They couldn't use the fitness equipment. It was just for pickleball, noon ball, things like that. They averaged between 70 and 80 court memberships per their staff's notes that I was taking in their trends. So we actually have obviously done pretty well without the fitness equipment over there. We have things over there. I can tell you in the mornings, we open at 7 Monday through Friday, from about 7 o'clock to about, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There is between 60 to 100 pickleballers in there every morning. And it's pretty busy. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are the busier days until noon. Tuesday, Thursdays, we have ladder leagues right after the recreational pickleball play that goes until about 2, and some of them stay until almost 3. It's pretty neat to see. You can see some of the pictures here. This is actually a picture I stole off of our camera system over there this morning. This morning we had all 14 courts going. On the hardwood floor we have 12 courts. In Bay 5 we have taped down 2 additional pickleball courts because of the demand of there during the morning times for pickleball. When all the kiddos are in school, all the adults are coming out and playing pickleball. So that's kind of our members. So we're very happy with the number of members that we have currently. The users, I just kind of talked about the pickleballers and the noon ballers that I mentioned in here, but Tyler with our adult sports program, Tyler has done a great job with that, and he has his volleyball leagues playing over there as well as the basketball leagues playing over there quite a bit. The main renters or users as well as Hoop Dreams, Elite Basketball, Ignite Volleyball, Ignite Basketball. The YMCA still uses 25 Saturdays of the year. So we still have that going on Saturdays as well. And then just the regular drop-in users that we have on Friday, Saturday, and Sundays, which is family night. Friday, Saturday, Sunday evenings, we have more courts available because of not a whole lot of people are practicing on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we have 2 courts, if not 3 courts available in the evenings for open gym, which those are our heavier numbers. So it kind of works out Friday, Saturday, Sunday to have those extra courts available for the drop-in users with that. The events, I try to get this out to our neighbors the best we can, try to be good neighbors because parking can be an issue over there, as some of you may know. But you can see a lot of our events are on Friday and Saturday here. So different tournaments that outside organizations come in and run. The next one coming up is the first one listed here. It's the Thanksgiving Shootout. That's been there for, I think, since home court opened back in 2005, 2006. So along with the Y. But there's a couple others on there that are newer. Martial Arts wants to run one in July, which is new. And there's one youth basketball tournament in March that's new. On top of that, I'm working with, talking with Wheelchair Rugby. The YMCA let them use that facility in there for their tournament that they have, and they want to run it in March or early April. I'm just worried about the floor with the Wheelchair Rugby. Don't Google Wheelchair Rugby, otherwise you'll obviously say absolutely not. Don't play on the hardwood floor, things like that. But the YMCA, when they oversaw home court, they allowed them in there, and they said they have absolutely no problems with them. They were great, didn't worry about the floor at all, didn't leave any marks. You can't even tell they were there, type of thing, when they leave. They currently practice at Fort Boise on their hardwood floors over there, so I need to have a message into their manager over there to kind of talk to them. I'm nervous about the floor, is what I'm getting at. So I'm kind of talking with them about that, as well as Tyler and his right-hand man, Ryan, are talking about running a Ultimate Frisbee tournament in there this winter, the first weekend in January, I believe it is, for Ultimate Frisbee, which with the floors and the courts being in there, I mean, you have 100 feet wide by 278 feet long. So you have a long, almost a real football field in there, indoors. So they're trying to be creative with what they have in there as well. Another event we're talking about, still trying to pencil it out and stuff, is an indoor, I'm going to say wiffle ball, slow pitch softball tournament in there as well. So we're just trying to be creative what we have with the space and what weekends are available in there when it's not being used by Y Saturdays and things like that. So those are kind of the main events that we have going on. Budget, kind of jumping to this quite fast. When we first purchased home court, we were very conscious about budget, what it's going to cost us and things like that. This FY expenditures, you can see what they are there. The total subsidy was about $121,000 on that, and that was coming from finance. Some of the things that we've done to try to help with that subsidy is done some of these projects that we've been, blessed to have from council. We installed some zoo fans estimated 10% cost savings on energy and power and stuff like that. That's tough to tell what the zoo fans are. It really helps with condensation and moisture in the air. It pushes the hot air down, so it helps keep the building cool. It's tough to really say if it's 10%, 20% or not. I just put in there as estimated. It helps out a little bit, I'm sure. The main thing that we did last year was the light retrofit. We changed all of our lights from the whole building, outside, parking lot, inside, all the above, over to LEDs. The total project cost about $34,000, $35,000. Idaho Power, in turn, gave us incentives for about $24,000, $25,000. So really, the whole project cost is close to $11,000, which the ROI on that's about 16 to 17 months. So cost savings about, according to Idaho Power, is a cost savings approximately about $7,500 a year. So on top of that, the church lease, we got that done last year, which increased their rent a little bit, and then our members increased. When we first took over the building, based on what the Y had, based on their numbers, we're trying to get some projections on that. We were trying to project what those memberships would bring in revenue-wise. We were projected about $1,500 to $2,000 a month. In the first month this year in October, our first budget month, we brought in just over $7,000 in memberships and day drop-in passes, which is great to help us pay for the facility.
Garrett, can I interrupt? If you go back, I'd like it if you would just provide a little perspective on the subsidy, because it's actually a lot lower than we projected, and there's a huge amount of great news in that number.
Sure. So thanks, Steve. So when we first purchased the Y, based on YMCA trends and things like that, with their memberships and with their fitness facility and things like that, we projected that we would be subsidizing this building somewhere about $250,000. Right in that budget range. In doing that, taking over this budget, we were like Steve said, we're very conscious of what that subsidy is going to be. We're trying to do everything we can to lower that, to where we got it down to $121,000 last year, which is obviously a little less than half we expected. So there is something to say about that. I think that's just. I think me hounding staff, hey, turn off the lights if nobody's there. You know, we don't, why are we opening this early? You know, why are we doing that? Those types of things. But overall, I think it really has to do with just trying to be budget conscious, not just spending money just to spend money. I can tell you that one of our big frustrations over there is that we really want to paint the walls where the Y moved out in Bay 5. It's driving me nuts because they're just kind of dirty and need to be painted and things like that. But we're trying to be budget conscious in the fact that that's part of our renovation project coming up in next May. So we don't want to just go put a couple $1,000s into paint and then have it repainted later. So we're trying to be budget conscious in that and just really, I don't know, pinching pennies and doing things that need to be done, not deferring maintenance, getting it all done when we can.
And pinching pennies is half of it, but you've also brought in more revenues than we projected, which is also great.
True. So we have more users. Schedule-wise, people renting the facility, people using the facility. You talk to the YMCA staff when they were still living there with us, and they said this is the most people ever been in here. There hasn't been this many different groups, this many users and things. So that's a good thing to hear. You talk to our building guys here, John Sweeney and those guys, and Bill Young. They say, yeah, Home Court's we're putting toilet paper over there all the time. I mean, it's one of the heaviest used facilities that we have in Meridian. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have. Some of the projects and milestones, I kind of mentioned this already. Things that I am kind of proud of is the light retrofit, the floor resurfacing project, and I'll show you some pictures of the floor resurfacing project. I'm kind of, I guess, nerded out on some of that stuff because I really enjoyed watching the process of doing it and learning it. I feel like I know enough about hardwood floors now just to be a little dangerous, but not, by watching the whole process. But that was a big undertaking, and working with those guys with Hicks Brothers Flooring, they're the ones that got the bid for that. The church lease, the Bay 5 budget design, the software changeover. I know Colin's been working hard with Rec 1 stuff. I've had some struggles too, but it's just, I know it'll get better. So we're working on the Rec 1 stuff. But that, and the moisture issue. This is kind of where I want to talk about the moisture stuff. We're working with iCamp right now. We're going back and forth. We got a report back. We're kind of going back and forth with what's really going to happen. Right now, we're waiting for our insurance to break down what each of the costs are for the repairs for the Bay 5 and the moisture. Once we get that back, we'll be working with iCrimp to basically get the difference in what our deductible is and things like that. But there's a lot more into that, but that's just kind of the brief version of that stuff. So here, I just kind of want to show some of the the pictures. So the picture in the top left there is where they just first started sanding the floor. It's the first sanding, kind of getting it all those finishes on there. He says there's probably roughly, each time you resurface the floor, there's about 3 resurfaces or 3 coats that you put on there. So he's saying there's about 30 different coats that are on this floor right now that he's sanding down to the wood and restriping the lines and things like that. So those guys are on these little Zambonis or lawnmowers, whatever you want to call them, going back and forth constantly. I don't know how they didn't fall off of those things, falling asleep, but they're constantly staring down at the lines, keeping them straight lines and going. As they go, they're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and you can kind of see as it goes how it just kind of comes off. Some of the floors down there that was put on prior was just flaking off, chipping off in big chunks, which isn't really supposed to do that. So it was definitely a need, definitely needed to be done. You can see how clean it looks now on some of those pictures there. On the left-hand side here is kind of the same picture as the one on the right and the top, both the top there, but this is how they put that on. They put it on manually, all that stuff. They don't put it on with a machine or spray it on or anything like that. They dump a bucket on the ground and follow it with a little squeegee and get all the lines out and all the bubbles out. And it's kind of an art when you start to watch them do it. Very interesting to see on there. Some of the things we did do on this is all the pickleball lines now are painted down. Before, some of them were painted or taped down. I don't know, Collins, taped down some volleyball lines with me before and things like that. It's tough to paint all those lines down or even tape them down, excuse me. So now they're all painted down. We actually have them all uniformed. Before, the ones in the far court you can't really see down there, in the front court were spaced differently based on where the volleyball holes were, because they use the volleyball standards for the netting for pickleball. We have them all uniform now, so they all look like they're supposed to be there. Look sharp. The pickleballers, they love it. The only thing they, I'll say, complained about was a little bit of the glare on the floor, which it's a brand new floor. There's no dirt on it, right? So it's going to have a little bit of glare to it. I haven't heard that for several weeks, mainly because it's scratched up a little bit now. It's been used. It's, the glare kind of fades away after a while, so it's been good. As well as the brand new lights put a little bit more, it's a cleaner light on there too. So they're actually very happy with what's going on out there with the floors, and I think that reflects in the numbers of memberships we have and the number of pickleball players we have. The bottom picture here is kind of a closer look. You can just see how clean it is. I was just impressed with how clean the floor looks when you first walk in now. Before, there was scratches in it that had been covered with layers of finish that are just dirty still, and that never really got cleaned properly potentially. And now it's just clean. It's nice. And I know Ross, as I was walking over, leaving here, come over here today, he was out there with the big broom, and he's out there with gum, scraping gum off. He really takes pride in that floor and the way it looks, so he was out there taking care of that today. Upcoming projects. As you guys know, we got budgeted to renovate Bay 5, and what that entails basically is a front desk, entryway, access, office, Bay 5 flooring, paint, like I mentioned before, some curtains in there to help divide if we wanted to put different classes in there. The curtains aren't very soundproof, obviously, so we have to be creative and program certain things at the same time that'll work over there. But the restroom remodel is what I'm most excited about. Just in that restroom like today, and it's just crowded. When you have a bunch of people in there, it's just crowded. It doesn't flow very well with that. And then the condensation, humidity improvements, you can see that there. We had about 8 or 9 drips last year when it comes to condensation during heavy use times or events. We installed 8 zoo fans on the high side, right close to where some of those 9 drips were, but strategically spaced the fans out where they're supposed to be. We went from about 9 drips to 1, right? So which was a very good improvement. The 1 drip, this is where it was, and we peeled back some of the insulation up there, and you can see the beads of water up there above that 1 spot. So with this project, we're going to be able to help with that. We're going to put in 8 more zoo fans, do some upgrades to our HVAC units, get some airflow in there with that. So that's kind of the Bay 5 renovation. That picture right there is just a concept. Nothing is set in stone. I want to make sure that's clear, but this is just a concept that we've obviously taken. You guys have seen this before. It's just a concept. It shows the family restrooms, kind of shows the showers and the restrooms actually separated, as well as the front desk area and an office there, an entryway, and a little bit of storage. With that, we wanted to get fiber in there last year. And IT is working on that. They're hoping to get that done here in FY19. And with that, I'll stand for questions. If there are any.
Commissioner Gelsomino?
Madam President, one of the quick questions I have regarding the restroom remodel is, you know, when I go to Axiom and I see the restrooms there, I understand it's state of the art to have the hand dryers, the blow dryers. Various studies have said that it is incredibly less hygienic to have these air dryers versus the old-fashioned paper towel or just another form. What kind of, I guess, hygienic technology are we implementing into these restrooms? Because it is an activity facility where there are families, there are kids, it's bodies in motion, it is tons of bacteria that is just ready to be, you know, it's there.
Sure.
So, and I'm a bit of a germaphobe, so, you know, I cringe, because I used to work at Axiom. Okay. And when I was the team leader there, the towels and the rags and the spray bottles were replaced every hour on the hour. But in other locations where it's a little bit more lax, for whatever reason the case may be, the towels are black, the spray bottles are empty, you know, there's just sweat on the machines and the equipment. So obviously coming into the cold and flu season, and in any way, shape, or form, no matter what season it is, we want to keep our citizens healthy and hygienic.
Sure. Good question. Right now, the way and we haven't really went into that kind of nuts and bolts of the renovation yet, but I envision, which we currently already have, the motion sensor paper towels. We have the motion sensor soap thing. We have the motion sensor hand sanitizers all over the facility. We do have the handle the water still, you know. So I would see us upgrading to the motion sensor, you know, it comes on, those types of things with that. Right now, to get into some of that stuff, I mean, I would say, yeah, that's what we'd want. We'd like to look at those types of things. I think that's kind of what we want, like here at City Hall, everything's motion sensor. That's what we'd want to do. Not only is it more sanitary for germs and stuff like that, but it's also efficient with water use and things like that. So we want to take all that stuff into consideration with that. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Well, I think, if I can clarify, I think what we're talking about is if it would have the blower or if it would be the paper that comes out. The studies, I believe, that I saw in the news and things of that nature had to do with if it's the dryer, you're putting your hands and it's blowing air, you're blowing germs everywhere.
Right, and some of it it's mortifying. I mean, it's hair-raising, and
Right.
Thank you, Madam President, for the clarification. Because I understand. I'm totally for the environment. I know we don't want to waste paper and trees and paper towels, but at the same time, do we want to get bacteria and germs and viruses spread?
And I think Commissioner Steele has something to add to this.
With the dryers, it all depends on where you pipe the air from. The problems they had with the ones that you guys are talking about is they were bringing air from the restroom right through the dryer onto your hands. Because of the whole germ thing, they start piping it in from outside, so you're getting fresh air onto your hands, so you're not getting recycled bathroom air. So some of that's not an issue anymore.
Wonderful. So it sounds like it's already been resolved on previous endeavors that we've had. So, well, that's great to confirm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or concerns that we should discuss at this time?
Madam President, I do have a question for Garrett.
Benson?
So your budget for this year had a $121,000 subsidy. What is your expected subsidy for FY19?
You know, that's a great question. My goal is to have it less and less every year. You know, but the reality of that is I don't know an answer to that. Mainly because some of the projects we've done, how well is that going to help? The YMCA lived in the facility for 6 months, 7 months, about 7 months, leasing stuff back. What's the difference of them leasing stuff now on Saturdays and some other things? What's the balance there? It's tough to say.
Okay.
They're in the process of trying to figure out how much they want to use their own facility compared to home court with the new South Y is what I'm kind of saying there. So
yeah,
I don't know if I can answer that question.
Just curious.
Being a competitive guy, I want to lower it and beat it every year. You know, so I would hope about the same, if not less. Now, this year may be a lot different because we have the big remodel, right? So I do know that this $120,000 that we're talking about included the $80,000 floor refinish.
Okay.
You know, on that. So that's the whole thing combined there. So this year probably a lot more because of the refinish or the renovation, but it could be different.
And Madam President, I have another piece of that, which I think you touched on, but just to make sure it's clear, this year we don't have the YMCA's rent payment, so that we will have lower revenues, so that'll increase the subsidy as well. Maybe we could end on next steps and just have you touch on the process you're currently engaged in to select an architect and CM for the Bay 5 project.
Sure. So right now, we've been working with our purchasing department, and we have RFQs put out right now for design development and construction documents, as well as an RFQ out for a CM to help out with that project, to keep the budget under budget and on time. So those right now, we're reviewing those right now. We have to have those reviewed and turned into purchasing by Friday, and then we're looking at next week potentially awarding that and starting to work with those two RFQs.
Wonderful. And Commissioner Peppin?
Madam President, are you including capital improvements in your expenditures when you're putting those numbers up there, Garrett?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thanks. Good.
I guess just for helpful, make your numbers look better, you could potentially pull a different chart, pull your capital expenditures out, or at least if the floor refinish is 7 years, divide it by 7.
Sure.
You're still spending the money, but it does show us
An average.
everybody
Yeah.
how effective you're running your program, because it's not fair to take a 1-year hit. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
Completely understand that. Yeah.
Any other questions or concerns? Well, I think it's wonderful that you have that big of a subsidy for the first year, and that I think everyone knew that we needed this facility and that we wanted it and it would be heavily used, but to make it pretty much double what the goal was, that's very impressive as far as the revenue you guys will be able to bring in and everything you were able to do with the budget you had. So
That's my goal
thank
every
you.
year.
Madam President, Garrett, I just want to second. I think it's really impressive how effective the program is and how much use you're getting out of that facility. It's pretty impressive. I didn't know we had that many pickleballers in this city.
I'll tell you what, go down there any morning. You have the peak times between 9 and 11. They'll tell you, so it's great.
And if you do the wiffle ball tournament, let me know.
Sign you up, right? You and Brian, right? All right, well, thank you guys very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And next up, Kim Warren for Pathways. And we have an action item tonight. So this is exciting.
Madam President, everyone, good evening. And since you just said that, I am here to start by saying that it's not actually an action item.
Okay.
So I'm sorry to disappoint. Emily, set us straight if there are any procedural things we need to do. So we do have quite a bit to discuss, and I think we're seeking some input. I'll get into my presentation and explain why. We are due for an update on this map, obviously. Mostly we want to stay ahead of growth. But it's a fairly, based on some of the existing data that was, according to GIS, it's a little incomplete. We've been working with them. We've made big strides the last month or so towards getting a process for correcting all that and implementing it. So we've taken a big step to get closer, but tonight we're kind of doing highlights of major changes to the map. So with that, I'll get started. So in terms of the updates to our pathways layer, there are 3 different kinds. They're small things that have been constructed since the last map that was adopted, gone from proposed to existing pathways. There are other cases where there are minor changes to pathway alignments. It's either the northwest or the southwest side of the canal. These things aren't particularly interesting. But those are part of what we will be including in the update. Tonight, I'm going to focus on what I'm calling emerging areas of need within the area of impact of the city, but kind of at the edges, places where the pathways are not as defined. We tend to not get in too much trouble, or haven't yet, because when people are annexing into the city, developers, there's a master development agreement, and at that time we can say, well, there really should be a pathway, and if it's not showing on the plan, we get to be a little tougher in what we require of development at that phase in the process. So that's been good, but we do need to start to define some of those growth areas so that even in those cases, I think if people protest and it's not in our plan, then obviously it's a harder requirement. So in terms of an overview, we're looking at, mouse up, several areas that have kind of just in terms of my reviewing plans and enforcing the master plan seem to have been a little hotter, I guess. The Black Cat extension heading up to Aldapi Park and the Boise River Greenbelt. Owyhee High School, which recently got approved, and that was quite a process. 10 Mile Crossing down near the newest interchange in I-84. The Hillsdale YMCA Discovery Park area. There's a lot of growth in that part of the valley, and not a lot of connectivity, and at some of the South Eagle Road, ACHD public input meetings, we've heard people say or ask if we're thinking about that. So those are some of the areas that we'll be looking at tonight. Also, I'm going to take a minute to update you on Rail with Trail. We've talked about that on a local level recently. Those are the purple dots. I had written in work group has been reactivated, which is sort of a silly way to say it, but that's kind of how it feels. Compass is leading this effort regionally with the Rails with Trails work group, and they had some staff turnover, and I don't think they met in the time I had been here, which is over a year, until about a month ago. So we've had 2 meetings. The work group has kind of reignited its effort. Steve's gotten involved, and other members from community planning. So we've got good representation from a lot of agencies around the city, and Compass has some dedicated staff focused on leading that effort. So the recent meeting was to discuss an RFP that we're putting out this month, and we're seeking, there's quite a bit of study that has been done and information currently. So we're not wanting to rehash any of that, but we are looking to select a consultant who could help us refine concepts. Steve, jump in if I miss anything, but we're looking at along the corridor, which is 28 miles. It's something like that between Nampa and East Boise. And we're looking at various cross-sections for how rail traffic and pedestrian pathway type use might occur within, it's a great big right-of-way, but there are a lot of different situations along the corridor and a lot of potential applications. So we're looking to refine some concepts that we already have, to put some cost to it, and also seek some creative strategies for implementation. I think, as with almost any pathway that we've been doing locally, it's not the design that's as tricky, or even the paying for it so much as the permission. I think in this case, working with the railroad, it's going to be a cost and an access issue. So we're looking to end the process with a solid document tool that would have a short, almost marketing piece where we could approach Union Pacific, we could approach stakeholders along the corridor, post on websites at a glance, here's what we're trying to do, and to build some support and to start with the next step of making this work. It's probably a 20-year effort. We're doing our small project here. There's some right-of-way that's the Boise City owns, way out by Micron. In between, it's going to take some doing, but it's exciting that the group is going again, and there seems to be some support behind it because it's going to be a big effort. Steve, anything to add?
I would just to give my own summary, I think all the pieces are captured here, but my own summary would be I see 4 deliverables from this particular consultant process. One would be refining the concept designs, and there's kind of 3 concepts out there, and we need to say which concept belongs in which location. But this is still staying at the concept level. I mean, this project that we're diving into here is not design, development, and construction documents. It's not figuring out how the pathway is going to cross a certain culvert. It's still at a much higher level. That kind of detail would come later with a much bigger public process with federal funds, if such become available, things like that. But this is to get what we need to have the conversation about funding, about concept, about what are we even talking about, right? So number 1, design concept refinement. Number 2 is the cost estimate for that. And we know as soon as you do a cost estimate, it's outdated within months. So we don't want to, because this is a long game, we don't want to spend too far down in the weeds, but we do need to know the
order of magnitude. I think we were saying at the meeting.
Those dollars. Is it $1 million? Is it 14 million? Is it 140 million? Is it more than that? Don't know. The third thing that I would see coming out of it is what some of the agreements might look like between the jurisdictions, because this is it going to be one coalition maintaining the whole thing? Will each jurisdiction maintain their own separate? We just need to figure out some of what that might look like. And then the fourth thing would be the marketing piece. I like the term infographic that we were talking about in our meeting yesterday, but some things that tell the story at a glance of what this is all about that we can share with elected officials, with you as commissioners, with the media, with others. But I see that as an outcome of this effort.
Madam President.
Great.
Steve, Kim, has anybody ever approached the railroad and said, hey, would you sell us 12 feet along the side of it?
Mr. Sitaway.
We've had many conversations with the railroad. So far, they are not.
Question?
I have to go back and look at minutes. I know we've talked about all kinds of options. So far, they've not been supportive, but we also haven't had any money.
Well, but they keep looking at the liability standpoint of it, and that's all you hear from them. Well, if they don't own it, there's no liability on their part. So,
right. But they're also interested in corridor preservation and preservation of spur line opportunities, things like that, that would still be concerns even if we took over ownership. So liability is one of their piece, and ownership does overcome that, but that by itself doesn't overcome all of the concerns.
Thank you. Any other questions or concerns from anyone?
Okay, let's move along then, Madam President. I think since we're seeking input here, if, Madam President, you'll do me the favor of kind of keeping time so it doesn't run too long, maybe as we talk about these areas, please just volunteer any thoughts or suggestions you have. And I will also point you to the legend that I handed out for each of you, which will give you some insight into the line weights. Just quickly, the area of city impact is in the heavy dashed dark blue line, and then the orangish yellow line. Those are kind of trails we're blazing, pathways we're blazing, in terms of they typically haven't been shown on the map, and we're thinking about new areas, and that's kind of the highlight of this discussion tonight. So in this area at Black Cat, we've in the past identified Linder and Locust Grove as our connections north to Eagle, to the Boise River, and in reviewing some plans, I don't remember the name of the sub, but it was up here in this northwest corner of Chinnen and Black Cat. It seemed that we should capture some some right-of-way, at least an easement, to have pathway that would eventually cross the Phyllis Canal, go down off the bench here, and then have the potential of going under the new or the proposed State Highway 16 alignment. State Highway 16 affects a couple of these areas that I'll be talking about. So not only to go west eventually, but to go north to the future Aldapi Park. It's evolving in terms of what's underwater and what's our park and how much is riverfront, but that is our connection to the river. So for each of these screenshots, I also have one with an aerial photo so we can go back and forth, but this was the configuration. But this pond was on the park site, I know, when I did a concept for it as a consultant. It's changed a bit, but the idea would be to get to the Boise River and then east and west. The lines are still a little rough, but I think this is an important connection in an area that is part of the city. We do have some riverfront property. It's just we haven't really considered to this point. If there's not any comment, I'll go on. We can always double back. So the next area is the new Owyhee High School, recently approved. It's way out west near the county line. This is also State Highway 16 as proposed. And it creates some interesting issues. A lot of our pathways are needing to route to major intersections to get over the highway, as I think it's intended as a thoroughfare that will go straight through and not have a lot of intersections. So in looking at these plans, the 5 Mile Creek pathway was to the north. The Oaks are over here. 5 Mile is one of our focus pathways. We actually have quite a bit going down to the east. There's a bit of a bare spot. The segment D is one of our projects we're working on. But as we go west, there are some actually constructed, in red, these segments through the Oaks. So looking at the plans for the high school, it seemed like it's a high school, and also proposed to the north is an elementary school and a subdivision. So the developer of the proposed sub and the high school were encouraged to work together to create some, well, connectivity for vehicles, and I'm always, of course, shouting for pedestrians. But we required a pathway to the north up here between Ustick and McMillan. So wasn't on the plan, just seemed like a really obvious thing to try to get in. So, and there's a bit more information. Unfortunately, our GIS photographs, the data is different and it's a little bit behind Google Earth. So Google Earth is a little more current. So another area that has seen some progress is the 10 Mile Crossing out at the newest interchange and near the interstate. It's a Brighton Corporation development, and I toured that a few months ago. There was a master development agreement with some pretty rough lines on it, and when the interchange was built, we do have a great, strong pedestrian link over the interstate, and then existing pathway all the way up to Franklin. Some has been built. It changed sides. The developer worked with the irrigation district to develop and actually heavily landscape pathway as an amenity for this development. There's going to be some residential here, so it'll go through along. I seem to not be able to read my creek name. It's 10 Mile. And then north-south connections proposed. This is a constructed segment along the Purdom Drain, north of the interstate, a really nice 10-foot wide pedestrian pathway, and the irrigation district required access under the 10 Mile interchange and the road, so there will actually be pathway that can connect to the west below that, so that's kind of exciting to have the grade separation there. And that's just a different view. I think the area where we probably need the most input would be the hills, the southeast, near Hillsdale and Discovery Park and the YMCA. We have 10-foot pathway in the park. We have some existing 10-foot pathway pretty strongly coming through Hills Century Farm. It'll go down, it does go down along the west side of the drain, and then it crosses over to the east. We're seeing some need to go north to connect to neighborhoods up here. And then also, we'd had some public comment that there isn't yet a good way to get to the new park. And Mike was speaking to a couple of different entrance possibilities. I think that could evolve. But as I understand it, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, there will likely be a road that I think we have to pay for part of on that east boundary of the park. So looking at a way to get from the neighborhood to the park. Red is built pathways, so this is going to be a really important connection, whether it happens more directly through some undeveloped property, or I think the suggestion from the community was, could we make something more direct here? We may have missed that in terms of development, but we're definitely thinking about areas that, or ways to connect YMCA to the park and the park to other areas that are coming online. So I would ask, and it was my intention to have a more interactive GIS presentation, and in the end, it didn't feel like we were quite there. So I don't have a map to zoom around on, but I would ask, are there connectivity challenges? I mean, I feel like I hear from people and I have a pretty good sense, but as commissioners and representatives of the public, do you have ideas for other areas that might be lacking in terms of drawing some new lines on the map?
Well, Ms. Warren, I have just, we've talked previously about taking Locust Grove down to Eagle, and that Eagle attended a couple of our events. They're Parks and Recreation Commission members, and it sounded like they were actively working, trying to connect to Meridian. Has there been any feedback or information on a point of connection that looks to be to where we should have a line on this map?
To Locust
Grove?
Grove?
Or is it too early at this time?
I think that line already exists, and I think that we are very much still on board as two cities trying to work together to make connections. I don't know that we have a graphic that shows.
Not
Oh,
really.
that one. There we go.
This one is
The big one.
hard to read as an overall, but if this is Black Cat, then this is 10 Mile, this is Linder, and then Locust Grove, I think, is here.
Right there. So that would be you can see the green line going north to connect up, and then it's just a matter of getting Eagle to take it on, or sorry, yeah, City of Eagle to carry it on to the green belt from there.
Eagle's a good partner, and they're an active partner. Right now, the route that's best kind of snakes through a bunch of neighborhoods and crosses Eagle Road at a designated crossing, and then connects in about Eagle Island. But it's not very direct. It's lots of weaving through neighborhoods. I haven't actually ridden it myself.
Yeah, Madam President, we did reach out to the City of Eagle to see if they might be able to come tonight. They are not ready. They're still working on adopting their plans. He did ask us to reach out to him again next month in December to see if he might be able to come in December or January. But we expect we might have them here to have that conversation soon.
Great. It's wonderful news. Really excited for that.
President.
Mr. Steele?
Yeah, Mike, there's a pathway across from Sawtooth. Is that thing done now?
Go ahead.
Mr. Burton?
I think it is. There's a missing tooth. That there's a segment that was part of another property that isn't being developed right now. Is that the one that connects
It connects to, what is it, Bridge Tower or whatever?
to Sawtooth and then across? Yeah.
Yeah, they were supposed to, so it's been asphalted and everything all the way over?
I think so. It was conditioned as part of a development in there.
Right, and all the houses have gone in there, so.
Then it is.
I would
And
hate
that
for
was
us,
Bridge
well,
Tower.
I'd hate for us to hit those situations where the developer skips it and then he's
Yeah,
gone.
we will make sure that it gets you the current status and follow up at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think that's a good one to bring up under other areas to consider, and we can have Kim go out and walk it and verify.
Because that one actually really from Sawtooth, it gets back over real close to everything else we've tied out at 10 Mile, using the whole Bridge Tower pathway system. It creates a really nice loop in that area where if you really wanted to get on pathways and never hit a lot of traffic, you can make that loop in there and using the 5 Mile and that one and be great, so.
I also have a little big question for the one near the village. When we're looking at Eagle Road, we have a section that's green for proposed, correct? It's just short portion between existing to get back to the park, right when it gets to Eagle Road to go up. And that goes between developments and through a neighborhood right there.
Right there.
And then it
Right
connects
here?
there on.
Up a little
Yep,
bit.
right
and
there.
Right there.
So right there, it says proposed and it's green.
Mm-hmm.
So is the plan to take that then, because we'd talked previously when we do plan to do the railroad track crossing that would go straight up Eagle Road, should that whole thing be green, or is that no longer the case because now I see it's going back into the neighborhood kind of area and coming down, about like a quarter inch below where you're at?
When Steve and I were talking yesterday, just kind of about this overview, you had identified that as an area that we need to also look at.
Down here is. Yes, I would actually say that that area south of U Stick from Eagle Road to Meridian Road needs a closer look. There was a recent subdivision plat that just came through in the last couple of weeks that kind of brought it to the forefront, and they are building a pathway, but there was some discussion about where does it go really? What does it connect to? Because there are, with a lot of built-out areas in there, there are sections that are not low-hanging fruit for development to bring a pathway. So we may have to look at what's connectable, what would have to be on street, on a substandard pathway, if you will, for certain sections, and how long would they be. But without getting into a lot of detail here, I just think that area needs more. I would add that as an area that we ought to add to what we were already talking about. Now, I think, Jessica, or Commissioner West, the area you're specifically talking about, I think, is that leg that connects over towards River Valley Elementary and then south. Is that what you're looking at?
Yes. Well, yes, it's moved to be there. Previously, I thought that we were trying to go up and down Eagle Road, but we were worried about the safety of being on Eagle Road and people and family wanting to take their families right directly on Eagle Road.
I think we're trying to do both.
Okay.
The Eagle Road project is still very much alive. In fact, Mike, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So the Eagle Road project is, the planning department has filled out a grant request to receive federal funds to add sidewalks in some of those missing segments along Eagle Road. So they would be a detached sidewalk, and I think right now their funding request is in program development, which is a few years out, but there may be some shuffling that would allow it to come in a little sooner. They need to. There's a hang up right there, and there's some meetings that are going to happen because right now there's some discussions going on with who's going to maintain it if it's built. If the city receives federal funding to build this sidewalk, which I think they can in the existing right-of-way, who's going to maintain it? Because that's a state highway, and ITD has said that they don't maintain sidewalks. So there's going to be a discussion on, it's not an ACHD project or in ACHD's right-of-way. ACHD will maintain the sidewalks, but the state won't, even though the state does and has in other areas. Right now, they've kind of put their foot down and said, we don't want to maintain that. You go ahead and build it and maintain it if you want. But we haven't really come to a conclusion on that. So there's two parts to that. It's the funding, federal funding, which is a couple years out. It's in the works. And then there's also this maintenance agreement that has to take place prior to us talking to the city council and saying, hey, we're we're going to use these federal funds, we're going to build it, and we're not going to maintain it, so we don't have to worry about that. We need to have those answers first. So, yes, that's a kind of a roundabout answer. It's in the works. It's not in the next 2 years, likely 3 to 4.
So what we're doing right here today with the new lines is to kind of come up with a solution before then that kind of can get people from Kleiner Park all the way to onto Eagle. They can go up the back way through to Ustick if you're going left and up with the arrow, whoever's driving.
Yep.
Or they can go the opposite path and kind of get to the Fairview and connect to the path further down there. Is that the plan? It's kind of like an improv. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know if we changed the overall plan there.
Yeah, there's an adopted plan, and the symbology is a little bit different. It's kind of hard to read. But generally, we're thinking in terms of segments of pathway that make up our Meridian Loop, and then we have the 5 Mile Creek that cuts across, the Railwood Trail that cuts across, and a couple of other waterways. So we're trying to focus on kind of that big infrastructure in terms of pathway. And then I know Mike spoke to the state highway situation, and we do meet every other week to kind of coordinate those issues. And I think our pathway map is a little misleading in that we don't indicate those pathways heavily on our map because they're kind of in a different category, but I know that Chinden State Highway 2026 also, pathways are a requirement of development along that in most cases, but we're not really including them as part of our pathway system.
Right, so that's like an on-street pedestrian facility, like a sidewalk, but it would be a wider sidewalk, like along Chinden where it's going to be widened here in a year or so. There's development along that corridor has already been conditioned to build a 10-foot wide sidewalk. So there's pieces in already. There's some county properties between Locust Grove and Eagle Road that we need to work on this maintenance agreement because the city doesn't want to maintain 200 feet of sidewalk and then have the rest of it maintained by the subdivision that owns it. So it's kind of a weird thing that needs to get solved. And is being actively worked on.
And I think I like, and I feel it's like very helpful to kind of, when we're discussing, especially like tonight when you're asking for kind of direction with some of the different pathways, it's kind of nice because I don't know, I can't remember all the different intricacies that are being worked on the side and with who, and so if I don't see it on here, you think maybe it's no longer where we're going, but it sounds like it very much is. We're just not displaying it here tonight on this pathway of our pathways.
We are actively working on 10-foot wide sidewalk connections along some of these major corridors.
And Madam President, I think the point's probably well taken. You've got me thinking about, should we just show pathways along Eagle and Chinden as part of the pathway network?
Yes, it would be very helpful if we could see it so we know the options available or what's being worked. And you can put it in a color that says it's out of our hands to be coming soon, but at least we know this is going to be a connection. So if we connect ours here and there, it'll all come together and be one cohesive.
Sitting here tonight, I don't see a reason not to incorporate it into the pathway network map.
Thank you.
So I think that'd be a good thing to note, Kim.
I agree, and it would be helpful to me too, just during plan review. I mean, it's something that I become aware of, but there's no need for it to be a secret.
Thank you.
It's confusing enough as it is. So,
Kim, if we looked at, I know we have some stuff around Settlers Park. You know, Jessica's kind of got some lines headed that direction from Kleiner. Is there ways to tie that in to get people to and from? It's kind of this island sitting out in the middle of everything that we don't have a lot to.
Specifically, well, I know we have the South Slough pathway that we were referencing where there's some existing development, but it could be that is a bit of a desert in terms of connectivity.
Well, is there a way, on the backside, we have the one proposed coming right out of the west side, that. Is there a way to tie that in around the school and come right back into that other pathway that we talked about earlier?
I'm trying to picture the area specifically as a non.
Kim, he's talking about going from Settlers west to Sawtooth, and then when you see just north where that little red piece, yep, right there, and then into Bridge Tower west of there. He's talking about getting that connected, correct?
Well, that's the one, yeah, that's the one we talked about, that's green now.
Right.
That we need to check on, but if that piece is in and we can get around the school, that whole pathway then connects right into Settlers.
Yeah, and because I know Bridge Tower.
You see what I'm saying, Steve?
Yeah, we have looked, it's not low-hanging fruit, and then that area is already developed. So it's probably worth a conversation, because the connectivity would be
Maybe
phenomenal.
talk to the school, maybe, maybe there's something we can work out with them.
Yeah.
Quite possibly, yeah.
It's worth a look and a discussion. Absolutely.
Okay. Any other areas we should look at?
Madam President?
Yes.
So when are you hiring a consultant, I assume, to update the pathway plan, or is that something that it's at a staff level?
Well, in the past we have hired consultants to update the plan, but it's an ongoing annual. We're a little overdue on account of staff changes, but as I understand it, it happens just to keep the plan current and with some public input as provided by this group. And
Yeah, just to be clear, the annual updates are done at staff level. We don't anticipate hiring a consultant for this. We're just looking for direction so that as Kim moves forward with the refinements, that we can bring back a final proposed map for the next adoption that reflects our current thinking.
Sure, okay. I just, you know how it is, kind of the prep is different, and this has kind of been a different little bit format than we've done in the past, because we had the tables and the maps on the table, and we could, a little easier, because that's really difficult to see.
Yes.
And that's my only input.
point
So
taken,
just
and
kinda-
I think that we're not quite there yet. We're working with GIS too, so that if you did want to look case by case at all the changes, those will be available. And I think that it is unfortunate not to have the GIS map today, so we can zoom in on the areas that we were talking about, because it's a constant frustration, I think, in terms of being able to communicate the pathway system. It's not a really dense, super populated city, but it's over a big area, and it's hard to show on one map. So yes, when we'll be refining those changes, both the broad stroke and the specific, and then when we come back to you again, we'll have a more comprehensive edition, I guess, to parse as specifically or generally as you'd like. So we'll make sure that the areas that were raised today are specifically looked at. And the idea would be to come back for Park Commission approval and then move on to council adoption early next year.
So will that have, as we've done at least previously in years, Steve mentioned the low-hanging fruit. I've learned goals are good, and realistic expectations are also a benefit. Like, Jessica, I think, mentioned, realistically, Aldape Park is great. You need to plan for it. It's not happening. And so connecting to the Greenbelt, it's not going to happen anytime soon. So hence, Locust Grove, to me, would be a lot lower fruit on how to connect that, so Meridian City can connect to the longest pathway in the state. And so will you be presenting some potential, like we've done in the past, and we can kind of help prioritize if we had, I don't know, $500,000 to spend, or whatever the budget is, in other words, where this commission could throw weight on what pathways. I realize the plan needs updated continually, because things change and you need to stay on top of development.
You're asking if we will do the the pathway goals list and prioritize them like we have in the past.
Correct. Yes.
Well, with that though, in the past we've done workshops where huge maps laid out on tables, we all stand around it, and again, it's a lot easier to see than the little screen here. And
I
it
almost
helps you
brought
out
my
a lot.
huge map today.
And then it helps out a lot because we're all able to stand around it and you make notes on the map and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of where John's getting at. And it would be good for us, and I think everybody, to just lay the maps out on the table and have a workshop.
Yep. So I would say what I'm hearing is some desire for a pathways workshop.
Yes.
And I think that we can facilitate that either in December or January. It could be December, depending on the agenda. We'll get to the agenda side of it and decide which month it belongs in. This wasn't meant to sidestep that. So where we're at today is kind of an artifact of, we thought at one time we might be bringing you, if you remember when Jay's been before you before with kind of the focus on, here's the 30 or 40 little changes that we need adopted where it was proposed and now it's existing and things like that. We thought we might be doing that tonight, but as we dug into it, we're like, there's some bigger things at play here that we need to seek some direction on. Sounds like we've got the juices flowing. Might be good to follow up this discussion with an actual workshop with maps on a table. We can do that. It'd probably be helpful to what Kim is trying to do in resolving some of these. So why don't we just say that we will take this feedback and create a pathways workshop where we can sit down with a big map and some markers and talk through these in a little more detail.
And also, can we get there are 3 areas that you presented tonight in the presentation that it sounds like you would like more feedback on specifically, because there's multiple different proposed route options that you're hoping for feedback on.
Yeah.
Is that what I get from the Hillsdale one specifically? You said there's a couple different
Hillsdale
options there.
specifically.
So could we get these in an email to us, these specific maps, so that we could go drive and take a look at them and kind of understand? I know like the one right here that drops off, the yellow proposed, it goes through the farmland and then it just drops off. You know, where does that leave people? I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is
but then they have
really
to get
just a conceptual line. I should have explained that just because we'd heard that input. So, yeah, suggesting a connection. But yeah, you need to look specifically at and what's
We need to ask Emily if that would be okay.
Emily, is that allowed for us to get a copy of the maps that for some of the areas that she's hoping to get more feedback from, for us to individually possibly look at to see?
Madam Chair, yes, please don't discuss it among yourselves. That would be an open meeting violation, but
We can
certainly,
go on our own time?
yes. Thank you.
Thank you for double checking, Commissioner Steele.
Madam President. So, I guess, thank you, Steve. I guess I was a little confused on whether or not this was a 30,000-foot view of kind of what our overall goals are, in other words, or we're trying to dig in and talk about segments, and so that was part of my
Yeah, and I probably should have brought us a little bit back to the higher level because that's what that is tonight. But I do hear you on the feedback. In fact, early on in this position, I have a citywide map that I printed, and it's on 2 giant sheets of paper, and I just draw on that, and I, that's something I could photocopy sketches that we have, or, make a few copies, and it's big. It's like half the city on a map and half the city on another, and that is some of the difficulty in talking about it, is there's a lot there, and I've had the chance to see a lot of it this year, but not all of it in person, and so yes, let's plan that.
Yeah, and Madam President, I would just say we had put this on as an action item originally, thinking we might be looking for a motion, but I think at this point we are not looking for a motion, so we don't need to worry about asking for a motion on anything. We can just say, we've heard the discussion. I think it's exactly what we need to prepare a productive workshop for an upcoming meeting. If there are any other initial thoughts that you want us to take now, we will definitely take those so that we can prepare better for that workshop. But if there are not additional specific comments, we may have gotten what we need out of tonight. But
well, I'm very excited. So it sounds like, with these 3, it's the new development areas, so we're trying to get in early while we have developers developing so that we don't end up in a situation like near Settlers where it's already developed and we have to go back in later. So I'm very excited about getting on these areas as quickly as possible so that we can kind of work with the developers to make as much of the pathway as possible for all these people that are moving in. I know I go to the South YMCA quite a bit, and it's very busy. There's lots of excitement there. It's a wonderful facility, and I constantly see lots of people in that park. So I know it's being heavily utilized, and it seems like there are houses going up constantly every time I drive down there. So it's definitely moving along.
Which that's another area, getting them from the Y over to the new park, Discovery. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. And Steve, I think I heard you say, I think the first pathway map I saw was, I mean, it was, my gosh, it had lines everywhere. And I think we were trying to get a goal of getting a realistic map with the priorities with the 5 Mile Creek and 10 Mile Creek. And I personally think that's, I mean, I think you need to put to bed whether or not you can connect to Settlers Park or not. In other words, if it's a realistic goal, if you can't get it done without spending millions, it's not going to happen. So I think what you said was great, and I think my input would be try to get a base back with our goals. We want to connect with the new Discovery Park, obviously, and have realistic goals and a pathway network that you can, not little short chunks everywhere, and one that we can actually realistically put together and have what the city's priority on the survey was #1 is pathway connectivity. So,
And Madam
good
President,
job.
my only response to that would be that both are still true, meaning the overall pathway network map will still be what I lovingly refer to as the spaghetti map with lots of lines.
Okay.
That itself is not going away because we still want the overall pathway network to be big and robust. But there's also on top of that this overlay, if you will, of those primary pathways that we intend to maintain ourselves. And those include 5 Mile, 10 Mile, Meridian Loop, Rail with Trail, and those big picture ones. And when we started going that direction with the adoption of the master plan 3 years ago, the decision was discussed and made by the commission that our primary focus for construction with city dollars is to get the 5 Mile Creek pathway connected. And that has been our focus over the last couple of years. I think we want to continue that for our investment, but we still need to refine where do we want these developer-built, HOA-maintained pathways with a public easement over the top of them to allow interconnectivity, but even if we don't intend to maintain them as the city long-term. So I think both are true.
Madam President.
Makes sense.
I appreciate that you stated it that way, Steve, because I think one of the things that might help us as a commission is maybe something as simple as a color change. Instead of having this green spaghetti out on this picture, understanding where we're talking about things that the pathways that are HOA designated versus our primary pathways that we as the city of Meridian are wanting to invest in and build out. Because it as a somewhat new commissioner, it looks crazy. And it's hard to see where we're really focusing and where we're really trying to drive development and pay attention to. So when we have this workshop, maybe that's something that we talk about is how do we make sure that it's easier to read and understand as to what are our primary objectives and the pathways that we are hyper-focused on and the pathways that are still in our plan, they're still part of what we want to make sure we connect to, but they're going to be development from HOAs or from other community endeavors.
And Commissioner Jensen, Madam President, there's an infinite level of detail that we could build into the GIS map, and I think that's been part of what's slowed us a bit. I think when I showed up, I wanted to say, can I highlight the Meridian Loop? Can I highlight the 5 Mile Creek pathway? And yes, but that data kind of needs to be backed up in GIS. So that's part of the coordination. But yes, it can do so much more than it is. And yeah, the map has always been a challenge, and it does need to, I mean, we're working to improve it because there really are so many ways to look at it. And it's important to have all that information, but yeah, point well taken.
Madam Chair, you've been here almost a year. Kim, what's your confidence level in the data that's in GIS reflecting our pathways?
I do feel like, as I've been here a year, I mean, I do a lot of plan review, as you would know. And so during the plan review process, when I see a pathway, or I go out to visit a site and think, well, that's actually built and it's not showing up as built, I take a screenshot or I make a note. And so I have stacks and screenshots, and some of that I've handed off to GIS and it's been incorporated. So I think that in terms of relative accuracy of what's there and what's not, we have a pretty good grasp of it. I think the GIS data is a little, according to GIS, a little messy, and we need to make some decisions about what are the most important things to show, so it's not so complex that we can really use it. But to answer your question, I feel like, I've been taking notes all along the way. So in terms of raw data, I think we have a pretty good grasp of what's out there. I think that, there's still some finalization to do with it.
And I would assume some of that will probably be looked at when you go through the master planning process anyways with the consultant. They're going to need that information anyways, so.
Except
there's no consultant with this one. The consultant was on the Railway Trail specifically.
Railway Trail, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, right,
Disregard.
Thank you so much, Kim. I think we went a little bit over on time. Mr. Sidoti, did you have something you were going to add?
The only, maybe just real quick, the only other, on the level of accuracy, I'd say, in general, at the 5,000-foot view, like that big view, it's pretty accurate. When you zoom down to the street level, it's probably, it might be in the middle of the road instead of, where the sidewalk or pathway belongs. And there's some discussion about trying to get that cleaned up over time. That's not that important to us as long as it's in a format that we can have the necessary conversations with the development community when applications come in that, hey, it needs to connect from A to B and it needs to be on the north side or the south side. That's kind of the level is really important to be at. But in terms of mapping the existing pathways and making sure that they truly follow the center line of where it's at, I think it's kind of a longer term goal, and I think we'll get there one day, just not in the near term.
Thank you. Thank you very
Madam
much.
President,
thanks.
If I can just have a shout out, I just think that your position and City Council's commitment to this, because when we started doing pathways, there were so many pathways. One was on one side of the street, one was on the other side of the street. Nobody reviewed plans. Nobody made things connect. It was beyond spaghetti. And so I just think it's cool that we're spending the effort to do it, because it's pretty cool when you get to go across the street on the same side of the road, or at least there's a plan. And it's a process for those of you that haven't been following this process. It's, SpaghettiOs. And a lot has been corrected, and fixed, so.
Thank you for that.
And that comes down to the financing department over there with Genesis and everybody involved with doing it. I think it's pretty cool, so. Well, I know, but you're part of that, making sure that the position is here is so important. So, because without it, it was a mess.
Well, and I appreciate that comment, Madam President. In fact, my cohort at the City of Eagle, we were talking just in passing one time, and he said plan review is his favorite thing because he could kind of take that big marker and say, you might be building a 4-acre lot on the Boise River, but you need to have a pathway. And I don't know if I think of it quite that way, but I do think of it as a really important thing. Plan review in and of itself is kind of tedious, but I do think, and this is speaking in part as a consultant who worked on the last update, that the process of getting development to largely power build out of the pathway system and the plan review, I mean, we have good allies in community development and GIS, who a lot of eyes on it to make sure that we catch things. And if we've got even that vague line on the map saying we need to get from here to here, we have some power to figure out exactly how that's going to work and not let anything hopefully slip through the gaps. So I think it has come quite a ways just in the past few years with those kinds of policy and procedure. Okay.
And thank you very much. And thank you for all the designs and graphs. I know it's incredibly detailed information and lots to get in there. So thank you. All right. Would you like to go, Mr.
Staff
Sidaway?
reports. Boy, there's a lot going on. I'm trying to figure out I think the main thing that I want to just come back to, come full circle to where we started the meeting, is Christmas in Meridian. There are a lot of things happening related to that. We've already talked about the parade, so I'll leave that one be. But you probably noticed that the trees are wrapped out in front of City Hall. We're getting ready to turn those on here in about another week and a half. And then we put up the banners and the snowflakes down Main Street. Not this weekend, but next, I think it is. Or is it this? When's the 17th? This weekend. Yeah, so this weekend. This week, lots of things have started, including getting the floats ready, starting decoration on getting the Christmas tree at Generations Plaza lit. It was brought just last week to the plaza. It's a great, big, beautiful tree. It's about 10 feet taller than last year's tree. So if you get a chance, check that out. We got the Holiday Classic Volleyball Tournament has already happened. We've got the money from that we'll be purchasing gifts for children in need in the beginning of December. If any of you want to go shopping with us, it's always kind of a highlight for me. I love doing that. We got the Children's Winterland Festival the weekend after the parade. There's the Twilight Christmas Market, which is all the craft vendors here at City Hall. I believe that's on the 5th. I think that's on your list. But lots and lots of efforts related to Christmas in Meridian. We're going to have a new big snowflake, about a 6-foot tall lit snowflake out here on the corner of Main Street in front of City Hall. That'll be new this year. I'm looking forward to seeing that. That'll be a nice new addition. Lots of Christmas in Meridian. The other thing that I want to mention, and I'm probably taking a little bit of Colin's thunder, but Ali Aldape from our front counter left us a couple of weeks ago. Well, we've been very sad to see her go, but we had a wonderful farewell. I do want to put some thanks to her on the record because she was been a tremendous part of our department. We do have a replacement staff person with an offer in place. Vicki Wagner is her name. We should have her starting within the next week or so. And you'll have a new face up there to come and say hello to. So I think that's what I want to focus on tonight. I'll stand for any questions.
The date of the shopping, did you say that's next week? Or is it a window where you come in and get a list from the desk? Is that how you'd go about being a part of that?
Are you talking about the craft fair?
No, you talked about doing shopping for kids.
Oh, the shopping.
There's lists and you need help with shopping.
Yes,
and
the
wrapping gifts
date.
for the kids.
I think if you would just reach out to
Shelley?
Probably me or Rachel or both, we can collect names. We can give you the details. I think I have the tentative date on my calendar if I can find it real quick. We're tentatively looking at Tuesday, December 4th from 10 to 12:30, but we have not yet the mayor I know likes to do this with us, and we have not confirmed her availability for that time. So it comes with a big caveat. But we are looking at Tuesday, December 4th as the day we're targeting to try and do the shopping.
Any other questions or concerns for anyone? Well, hey, wonderful. So I think that concludes our meeting tonight. Can I get a motion?
We still have Mike and Colin. They may want to provide updates.
Okay.
Mike, you want to go first?
I was thinking, oh, you're going to close? That's okay, though. Obviously, Discovery Park, the weather's been cooperating, so we're still making a lot of good progress out there, pouring a lot of concrete, digging out foundations for the shelter, the 2 shelters that we added as a budget amendment, the sand and water play, the maintenance shop is completely designed. That was a budget enhancement that we did. That's going to be the grading work, and the gravel to get back in there is going to be part of a change order, and then the building's going to be put out to bid here in December. It's for a spring groundbreaking. So we hit the bid season just right on that. The other thing we have, we went through we had an audit done on all the parks for ADA compliance and developed kind of a list of some correction items. So we're moving through the correction items. We're about 95% done. One of the things, if you've driven by Bear Creek Park, we've got a lot of concrete work that's taking place right now with some new ramps in the parking lots and eliminating some severe cross slopes on things that made a lot of the park not accessible. So we're working on that. We're going to do a little more concrete work at Settlers Park and Centennial, and Heroes has a couple of things. You know, minor stuff, getting like a ramp getting down into the basketball courts, that kind of stuff. So working on that. Fuller Park, getting the restroom to the finish line, helping close that contract out, and doing a couple wells, one at Borup and moving the well at Settlers Park to get it off the street and back in the park where it's not vulnerable to being hit by a car, and some water source protection stuff as well. That's it. That's what I got.
Madam President, I just have a very quick question. I couldn't bring this up earlier when we were talking about Discovery Park because it wasn't really pertinent or relevant at the time, but because I kind of deem myself the advocate of our 4-legged furry companions, is the off-leash dog park part of phase 1 of Discovery Park that will be concluded?
Great question. Yes.
Okay. A follow-up, Madam President, very quickly. It's more of a comment than a question because I know we are out of time. Mike, one of the concerns that I heard, excuse me, this over the weekend from a few park goers of Storybark Park is, you know, they just, as of Saturday, removed the mutilated kiddie pools, plastic kiddie pools out of Story Park. And now our companions, our furry companions, deem the community water bowl as their kiddie pool. I saw a full-grown Newfoundland curl itself in a ball and lay in the water bowl. Shocking. So, but my concern is, and maybe you can answer this at a later time or could shoot me an email, is when I first brought my dog 3 years ago when I adopted him to Storybark, one thing that I've noticed is that besides other dogs laying in that water bowl, the water bowl not being changed frequently, or dogs standing in there with all their paws and drinking the water, my dog at the time got a UTI. So I've been giving him supplements to avoid that going forward. But is there, again, for future comment or answering, because we're out of time, is there a way to have, I guess, more hygienic facilities in that situation?
So to answer your question, I think maybe I'm a little, so the water bowl is not a built-in amenity. I think that's something that people are bringing. So I mean, I can tell or have staff throw them away, but I think someone's going to get upset. I mean, maybe that's the kind of thing that peer pressure would solve a little bit better than having, you know, we can dump the water out and say, hey, you can't have this in here, take it away, and then someone's going to get mad because they think they're doing the right thing. So I guess maybe let's put our heads together and see if it's maybe an education or a peer pressure. I know that the doggy drinking fountains, I've been getting some feedback that they're pretty gross because the first thing a dog does is goes and pees on it. Yeah, and they're just, so I don't even know if those are the right they look cute, and when you put them in, it's like, oh, look at that, it's a doggy drinking fountain, but it's really kind of it's more of a fire hydrant than a drinking fountain. So it's kind of gross. So, you know what, whatever good ideas you have, we have an open mind. We're all ears.
Thank you.
Madam President, I just have it spurred another question in my head, Mike. Do we have a park ambassador for Bark Park like we do for other parks?
We don't. No. So the park ambassadors are stationed primarily at Kleiner Park and occasionally at Settlers Park during the summer. So it's a regional park type of thing. They do have a vehicle where they go park to park to park. Like if they get bored and they can go visit, various parks, Tully Park and Story and the dog park. But how often those visits are, it's hit and miss.
I was just curious as to maybe our commissioner who is,
Oh, I see where you're going.
Well,
part of the...
Councilwoman Milam just said the same comment. They were putting dog silhouettes around the gate of Story Bark Park, of the Bark Park over the weekend. Someone from Parks and Recs maintenance, and oh my gosh, the dogs were going wild. They were barking at these things, and owners couldn't control the dogs, and they started pulling them off. So I don't know what that was about, if that was a new design look or something, but that was an interesting weekend at the Bark Park. I can say that for sure.
Interesting.
And I do approve. I would love to be ambassador for the dog park.
Colin.
All right, thank you. Got a much shorter list than when the staff report started, but so a couple of additional things outside of some of the Christmas stuff, and Steve mentioned our new admin assistant. We're very excited to have Vicki coming on board here later this month. And then, so the Main Street Market is kind of the off season right now, but we've been getting some of our agreements approved recently. So our agreement with Meridian Development Corporation to support the Main Street Market for the next 2 years has been approved. And just last night yesterday afternoon, I guess, at the council meeting, our agreement with the market coordinators was approved. And so we're all squared away now with our our agreements in place to move forward with the market. I think I mentioned it last month, but they are interested in expanding the dates of the Main Street Market. And so you can expect next year, I don't know that they have their dates definitively set right now, but somewhere around the middle to end of April until the middle of October is what they're thinking currently. I know that they've got a lot of reaching out to do to their vendors to find out who would be interested in coming that early and staying that late, but that's kind of what they're thinking at this point. So we're pretty excited for that. It will stay out here in the City Hall Plaza and on Broadway for the foreseeable future. I know there has been talk about putting it out on Main Street, but ultimately, the traffic concerns actually weren't the big issue. I think the market coordinators kind of wanted to stay where they currently are because the market currently touches Meridian Road, which is the main thoroughfare, and the fact that it touches Meridian Road provides a lot of visibility as people are traveling through downtown. And so the fact that it touches both Main Street and Meridian Road was ideal in their minds. And so for the time being, we're gonna keep it on Broadway. We're gonna extend the closure of Broadway out to Main Street, and then also incorporate the front parking lot of City Hall, so that there's gonna be plenty of room to add more vendors, add food vendors and things like that. And then we'll provide some directions on where to park. We've gotten permission from Bank of the Cascades to use their official permission. I think people have parked there just because it's there, but we have official permission from Bank of the from First Interstate Bank now to use to actually advertise their parking lot as market parking. So we'll be putting together some parking maps and things like that as well. So Main Street Market is moving forward. December 7th is when our winter spring activity guide will come out. So that will happen before the next commission meeting. So that's the next big round of classes. And then I also, the last thing I wanted to do was just kind of throw out a debrief on the trunk or treat event that, we thought it went really well again this year. It was, beautiful weather. There was a ton of people. And if anybody went, you'd probably notice that, the line was incredible that wrapped from Idaho out onto Main, all the way around the block onto Broadway, and then all the way back to 3rd Street. But with that being said, it was moving pretty quickly, and we really didn't have a lot of contentiousness or anything like that with people that felt like they were standing in line too long. We had police officers that were walking the line, handing out candy, and so we were trying to make it as fun as possible. And I thought Renee and Barb did an amazing job at putting that event on, and they've got more ideas for how to improve it, and it was just, a great success story over the last month. That's all that I had.
Colin, I attended that event and I loved it, but I've always loved it, but I did think it was moving a lot more. We didn't stand in lines like we had previously, and so I was very excited to hear from you and the team on how you thought it went. So, wonderful. Anyone else have any comments?
Thank you.
Madam President. Over here. I have a couple things. I was curious about the participation. Do you have any numbers or guesses compared to last year?
It seemed like the attendance was about the same as last year, and yeah, I know. And we were guessing somewhere in the 8,000 or even 10,000 people range, and I don't think the attendance dropped off this year at all. And so, we did have more trunks this year than we did last year. We had about 100 trunks total. And so that's still lower than we were 2 years ago, but it's up about 10 from last year.
But I turned it off, so it wouldn't. Thousands. How many thousands?
Yeah, thousands.
5,000?
We think more than that. We were thinking more like 8 or 10.
8 or 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's, without having somebody stand there at the entrance point with a clicker, we don't really know, yeah.
Okay, and I just want to say one more thing. So I apologize for giggling earlier, but Steve, when you were giving your report, Colin started with a list, and he goes, he's stealing my thunder. So then Colin's sitting over here, there goes another one. There goes another one. So he ended up with like 3 things. Anyway, he did have a really long report to begin with.
Just helping him out.
It's team. Anything else? Anyone else want to bring up any issues, questions, concerns, any discussion items we should add for next time that you'd like to add to the agenda? All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Madam President.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting. Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey, motion granted. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.